Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina Shar, and today my guests are Scott Eichinger and Jason Lott. Welcome.
Hello.
Cheers.
Cheers. Nice to meet you.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So, what are you guys drinking?
I'm drinking a Negroni, which is my go-to. Easy to mix up, equal parts, can't go wrong.
And gin. He's a gin drinker.
And I'm a gin drinker.
This is a Reanimator. It is rye and Amaro Nonino with a spritz of lemon.
So, I noticed, like, when I looked at your profiles on Instagram, that that's not the first time you mix a drink. So, how is that your passion? How, like, who is mixing and how did you get into that?
We both like to mix cocktails, and it was just a sort of an interest. I used to really be into cooking. I'm still into cooking, and it was sort of that evolution of cooking to wine to cocktails, the sort of as if, entertaining. We don't do a lot of it, but we used to do more. And so
Right.
it's a part of that process, and we love a good cocktail.
And it's definitely evolved over time. So we did, probably everybody that's done cocktails went through the flavored vodka phase, where you said, I'm mixing drinks, and it's just like a flavored vodka and soda or something like that. So understanding classic cocktails, we started to read a lot of books about how all these came about, and that a lot of it started in the Prohibition era, and it's
Right.
sort of like come full circle all the way back again, which is fun.
Right.
And a little well you knit is not a bad thing.
You just gotta be careful not too much. You'll drop a stitch.
I mean, have there ever been an issue where you regretted having a cocktail?
Yes, I had the story. So my very first project, I did what everybody probably does. I just did a garter stitch scarf. And we were hanging out with friends at a beach house, and it was brunch time. We were having mimosas. And I suddenly noticed that I had started doing this with
Leaning increases.
and I did the absolute worst thing you can do, which is I panicked and I immediately decreased. So it went like this. So now we look at it and we call it the mimosa bump on my
Good term for that.
Maybe you should stop so you don't get a mimosa bump on this one.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. So how did you get into the knitting? Who got into knitting first?
That was me. I've been knitting for just 2.5 years. And we had a friend visiting, and we did a road trip. We were going out, we're in Maryland, near Washington, D.C., and we were going out to visit some historic sites, and we've got a ton of them around here.
Right.
And our friend started knitting in the car, and I was just fascinated. And I'd been around knitters before. My grandmother was a crocheter, and so I've been around that, but I'd never had an interest. And very suddenly I started to like, how does that work? Like I just got this curiosity.
Right.
And within like a week, I picked up some yarn, needles. I found this vintage book that has all these stitch patterns in it. And I just started trying with the book, and I couldn't figure it out. So actually, like a lot of people that I've been following went to YouTube, and I learned how to knit from YouTube. And then the first thing I posted, like the mimosa bump, it was just this mangled thing of garter stitch, and it was just a mess. So I was like, I made something. This is mine. I did this.
Right.
And it stuck. I just fell in love with it and just kept going.
So Jason, how do we go from Scott knitting to you knitting?
That is a fun story. So first, for a while, I got back into doing cross stitch. And really, one of the goals for both of us was that we were getting tired of having nights where you're watching TV and doing this.
Right.
Give your hands something else to do. So I was doing that for a bit. And then, but I was still sort of interested in what he was doing. And then we were on a trip to New York, and he said, guy that I follow on Instagram. He's Nitty Gritty on Instagram. He's hosting a night with people that know how to knit and people that want to learn how to knit. And it was a guy's night. And, you know, did we want to come? And so it was really great. So the folks that knew how to knit were in the living room. And those of us that were learning were with Michael in the dining room, and started to learn a bit. And then Scott sort of helped fill in the gaps. But I mean, I think once you get through that first project, it's addictive. Like it's all downhill from there. You just can't stop.
Right.
I couldn't stop, and it's been great. So I've been just over 2 years myself.
Right. So you're not that far apart. Like you basically like have half a year of experience in difference. Did that bring any competition into the family?
I don't think so. There's a little bit of like, oh, I'm going to finish this project, and so we race to finish. But you know, if he finishes one, I'm like, well, I got to finish the next one. More of the competition comes from yarn. Like,
okay,
I'm getting some new yarn. I want new yarn. Well, you just got new yarn. Well, I want more yarn. Okay, then we get more yarn.
If you're getting yarn, I'm getting yarn.
We'll save on shipping if we're ordering, or we'll go to our local yarn shop and we both leave with a bag of yarn.
I'd say, you know, maybe occasionally there's a little envy. Like, you know, I see he did a pattern and I think it's gorgeous. And I think, well, I want to do that. But do I want to do that right after he did it? That, right. You know, maybe it would look a little weird. But, you know, it's like the first time you finish something that one of us hasn't done. So like he finished a cable project and, you know, I hadn't done that yet. And I was like, oh, I want to do a cable. I finished the sweater first and he's like, oh, I need to finish my sweater. So, you know, it's very lighthearted envy.
Right. So let's track back to the yarn purchases. Is there a family budget for yarn? Do you ever like find yourself breaking that budget?
There should
be. Well, there should be a budget. I think we are pretty good at self-editing when it comes to purchasing yarn. You know, where we are, traffic is a bear, so it takes a lot to get somewhere. So it's not easy for us to just run down to our local yarn shop. It's a purpose. We've got to go with a purpose. And then, you know, I think I usually go in with a project in mind, or at least an idea of a color theme or something along those lines. And that usually leads to what I leave with. And I might pick up one or two extra just for fun, just for, you know, something pretty. But we don't have a budget. We should. A yarn allowance.
Yeah, I mean, it was noticeable when the last time we were in our favorite yarn store, which I'll plug them as Fiberspace in Alexandria, Virginia. And they have a frequent buyers program. And so, you know, you just give them your email. And we were invited to a sale that apparently was clearly for people who had spent at least a certain amount of money. Okay, well, we hit that level apparently.
Yep. And we went and we bought more yarn, so it works.
But, you know, it helps when there's two of you, because then, you know, you get both of those and sort of bump up in those points. But like, I can't walk out of that store without like at least 5 skeins in my basket. It's such a great store, and you always want more. Now it's just a matter of where to put it.
Have there ever been an instance of one of you getting yarn and not showing it to the spouse, hiding it someplace else?
There have been 1 or 2 times. You're like, oops, got a package, running upstairs.
Now all the truth is coming
out.
I didn't even know that. I'm not surprised by this, but interesting.
So where do you hide it?
Well, it's not really hidden. It's, you know, we're actually doing not a remodel, but we're rearranging a room into our craft room, because in addition to knitting, Jason is a sewer, so we're going to put everything in one place. In the meantime, my yarn is all upstairs where my office is, and it's just kind of tucked to the side. And both of our stuff, it's in a box for now until we get our new space finished.
Right. Let's chat a bit about Jason's sewing. So I saw those beautiful caftans that you were like both modeling on Insta. How did that come into play? Like, why caftans?
It's, first of all, I think it's probably made the rounds of the gay male community over the past couple of years that summer has now been declared caftan season.
Yes.
Because, it's light, it's comfortable, and it's kind of gender neutral. It's just, essentially a big piece of fabric that you throw over the front of you. So if I was gonna do it, I was just looking at some patterns, and I found a vintage pattern from the 70s, which I thought just had some cool style to it.
Yeah.
At that point, like, it was a bit of a challenge for me to do it. So it was also a personal challenge that I wanted to try it out. So it worked out. It was great. It was fun to do. I think the lesson was I would like to do it again with a lighter fabric. Sort of didn't really think about that. It was just more like, oh, we're in Joann's, here's a cool fabric. But getting something that's more like a linen or something that lighter for summer would be appropriate. So probably do that next time.
So when did you get into the sewing?
During the pandemic, my birthday fell probably a month before we, started lockdown formally in our area. And Scott got me a sewing machine for my birthday, which was, a cool gift. And he said, you talked about it.
He's been talking about it forever. He's like, let's just do it.
I've never sewed in my life.
Do you remember talking about it?
Yeah, I think I did. And so, it was a cool surprise, and it was like, great. We have a friend that's a costumer, and she said, you'll come over, I'll do some lessons for you. And then the pandemic started. And so, of course, all of the things that you would think to do with sewing, it's very hands-on.
Right.
And I kind of didn't know what to do. And then we have a local fabric store called Three Little Birds, and they decided to just try out the idea of a virtual sewing class. And this was about 6 weeks later. And so I was in their very first try it out class. And actually worked pretty well. She set it up to do 2 different cameras, one that would be like on her face, like we're doing now,
right.
And one that would go down on top of the sewing machine and just, switch back and forth as needed. And it worked out pretty good for some basic things. And so I ended up taking a number of classes. And so I learned 100% online through virtual classes.
Well, I mean, I don't think it was that basic. I saw you doing like a complete dress shirt.
Well, yes. So we built up, so I got to the intermediate class, and that was the final project. And I mean, we finished that, and I said, I can't believe that I'm wearing a button-down shirt that I made myself. And
it was perfect. Like, I was so impressed. I was blown away that you actually...
Well, perfect for COVID proportions, because I was able to get the extra belly room that has developed over quarantine. But yeah, it was a great experience. And I think, as knitters and sewers and crocheters, what we get out of it is you finish it and you say, I made this thing.
Right.
And it's just such a cool feeling. I love that.
So how do you balance it with knitting? Like, how do you decide between the two?
Ooh, knitting wins most of the time. I've found that, at least for me, sewing, I need to do it during certain times of the day. Like, I don't do well doing it after like 6 o'clock. And I do better if I can just sit there and just keep doing it for several hours and not stop and start. I can't watch TV while I sew. Maybe some people can. And it's even hard to like listen to, audio of some kind. Whereas like knitting, you can sort of easily do it everywhere. We do it while we watch TV.
It's
and
portable.
If one person is driving, the other can knit. So yeah, so knitting wins out partially out of convenience.
Right. Scott, have you ever considered trying that sewing machine?
I'm interested, just haven't really pursued it. I took a sewing class in high school, long time ago. So I have sewn and I made a garment back then, you know, probably got a B or an A in the class. So I know the gist of it. I would need a refresher, and the machines have evolved. You know, they're now got little computers in them and you push buttons and they do things.
Right.
So I'm interested. There are some things that I'm like, if I do it, I'm like, I want to make new curtains or something flat and easy where size doesn't matter, which is the same thing with my knitting. Like I don't like doing sizing things, which is why the sweater I'm making is languishing in a bag.
For how long?
I started it September a year ago.
Okay.
And I have not yet separated for sleeves. It's top down. And I enjoy it. And I do pull it out every now and then, work a couple rows. And then I'm like, this other yarn is more exciting, or this pattern is more exciting. And so I just put it away and go back. So, you know, I'll finish it eventually.
Right. Are there like ever days when you are not knitting?
For me, since the start of the pandemic, I've only not knit one day. I've knit every single other day.
Right.
I'll knit in the morning when I wake up. I'll knit in the evening, sometimes at lunch. But there's only been one day that I've not knit. And I felt like something was wrong. It's like, I didn't knit today. Something's wrong.
Right.
I've done a bit less than that, but it's pretty regular. It's pretty rare. I would say the only times this probably happens is maybe right after I finish one project. And it might just be like I'm taking a day to figure out the next thing. Or I say I'm going to take that day off and I'm going to sew that day instead. But yeah, it's not often. Definitely not. And especially, I think the pandemic has really just given us so much time at home. It's just such an easy, natural thing to do almost every day. Whereas I think, you know, in the before times, it probably would be less just because we would be out more socially than we are now. But
so like when you knit, right? Like do you work, both of you, do you work on multiple projects, or you like one project at the time, mostly kind of people?
I usually have more than 2 or 3 going at once. Some of them, like the sweater, still a work in progress, still sitting there, doesn't get attention every day. But the things that I do work on, I usually have about 2 to 3 that are in heavy rotation. And sometimes I work on both of them in the same day. Again, if I'll start something in the morning, you know, with morning coffee, something easy as I'm waking up, and then something that maybe is more complicated in the evening while my attention span is more focused.
Right.
For a while I was strict, and I had a weird informal rule that I would only do 3 projects at a time, and then I had to finish one of them before I could start another. But I'm about to be having 6 going at the same time. So the rule has gone out the window recently.
Right. When you work on the project, right, do you already plan the next one, or like is there a time when you finish something and you need time to like look for inspiration, look like what's gonna jump at you, like do you search Instagram or something?
I am always thinking of what I want to do next, just because, you know, Instagram is very influential. You know, you're like, you see new yarn, you see a new pattern, you're like, ooh, I like that. And you jump over, you put it in your queue on Ravelry. So I've got stuff constantly going. You know, I'll spend a couple minutes kind of scrolling through Ravelry, looking, being like, I have that 1-2 skeins of yarn I don't know what to do with. And I just try and always kind of keep my eyes open.
Right.
to see what I might want to do with those. So I'm always thinking of sort of the next 2, 3, 4 projects.
And I think a bit, but like I'll occasionally have, it's like the equivalent of writer's block. Like I know that I want to do something else, I just don't know what it is.
Right.
And maybe I have things in my queue on Ravelry, but I don't have the yarn for it. So I need to figure out, what can I do with what I have. And I went through that recently, and that's probably why I'm about to hit this 6 projects at once thing, because suddenly all of these things fell into place at the same time. But it's fun, and I'm glad that Scott mentioned Instagram, just because I think it's so influential in our hobby that following knitters and crocheters is so exciting to see what people are creating, and just to bring light to designers and patterns that you're not aware of, or yarns that you're not aware of. And it's really fun. Or perhaps, fun YouTube programs where you get to do something.
Right. Do you feel like your life became different, like during COVID, because of Instagram, because of social media? Like, did that make you feel less confined?
Definitely for me. I kind of consider myself a bit of a lurker. Like I follow a lot of people, I like a lot of things, but I don't necessarily engage a lot. There are a handful of folks where I do comment on everything and sort of keep a conversation going. But it even that passive scrolling and liking, I felt like I was seeing the same people, and it was becoming a community again in a very weird passive way. But it was nice to start to recognize people and recognize their knitting and recognize their style of photography. And you'll scroll and you're like, who it is before you see their name, just because of how they've styled their photos or taken their photo, how they position everything. So definitely kept us connected. And, through Instagram, we actually met a number of people that right before the pandemic, we got together on a chat, started a chat, and we've talked almost every day for the last year and a half. A group of knitters and crocheters and makers, just because what else was there to do? And now we're meet some of them. We're going to be, we're going to Rhinebeck, and so we're going to have some opportunities there and start to meet these people that we've only known through social media and YouTube and Instagram.
Well, I hope I'll see you there then.
Yes.
Yeah, you better.
I'm definitely going. It's funny because I was talking to Ronnie from Inspired Fiberworks today, and she was telling, so there is this lady, Rachel, that follows both of us. And she's like, Rachel told me today that you and I must take a picture at Rhinebeck. And I was like, you know what? We're going to do the reunion for all the Fiberchats people who are going to be there. We'll get together. Yeah.
Yeah, we've not been. We went to a fiber festival here in Maryland 2019, the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. Right. And at that point, you were not knitting. I had only been knitting for 6 months. I had no clue what I was doing. But I show up at this massive festival and there's yarn everywhere. I'm like, I had no clue what to do. So I just grabbed like 3 things. I was like, I got it. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
And I am excited to meet people. I think, like, if I was going to share a message to new knitters and crocheters in the community, is it might seem like these folks that are designers or have their own programs, that they're some mythological beings, but they're just people, and they're very nice. It's a great, kind community. And I've talked with Stephen West, and I've talked with Stacy and Casey from Very Pink Knits. Like, they're just people.
Right. Well, if you want to talk to them about Fiberchats, so feel free.
Networking.
But you can just start a conversation, and you just never know.
No, that's so true though, because when I started the Fiberchats, for the first, it was not very thought through. It sort of was very sporadic. if not for Josh Stein, like I don't know if I would do that, but like he messaged me about something and I was like, Josh, I want to run this idea by you. I'm thinking of like interviewing some of the fiber artists. And it's like, yeah, like let me just finish my coffee and then we can do it. And I was like, oh, now? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So that's how it all started. But like when I was like, when it became a thing sort of, and when I moved it to the YouTube, I was like, okay, how I'm gonna get the guests here. And I messaged some people that I didn't even know. Like I just knew their names, but I never had conversation with them. And they were like, yeah, sure, you know. So it's like it's funny because you have this image of like them being untouchable, you know, and like above the rest. But in reality, you know, we're all members of the same community.
Yes, yeah. We're all very normal, cool people. And it's just, you know, they just happen to be creative in a certain way. And that's just sort of what might seem to be setting them apart, but I'm pretty sure that you don't need to treat them like they're a rock and roll celebrity at a fiber festival and like, oh, I just need to like keep a distance and whatever. Like, you know, just politely introduce yourself. Why not?
Right.
What do you have to lose?
Do you follow different people on Instagram? Do you introduce each other to like different fiber artists that you find on Instagram?
You find them a lot faster than I
Um, do I?
do. Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
I'll often see that you're
yeah.
commenting or following somebody and like, oh,
and I'm scrolling and I see other people that I know and then see them and see them. There are folks that we go in and we comment and tag each other, more so out of, oh my God, you need to see this.
Right.
Check out this yarn, or by the way, my birthday is coming up, or look at the pattern, or something along those lines. So again, it's that like we're in there, we're introducing, but it's not a like, hi, meet my friend, or meet my partner, or meet my, you know, what. It's more of like, check this out, and then we start following them, and then we talk about them later. We're like, oh, at dinner, we're like, oh, did you see what so and so posted today? That's really cool.
And I don't think we're even the most ubiquitous. Our friends Ryan and James, like they're usually pointing out stuff that then so it's you know, it's a cascade.
It's a mutual admiration society.
Yes.
Have you ever like came up with the same pattern, like that you got excited about and you wanted to knit at the same time?
Well, we're about to.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be the first time we're gonna do the same pattern at the same time.
Yeah. We're gonna do
the secret?
No, it's the Opus pattern by Maxim Sear. And so we have our yarn. The pattern releases this week. So it's more like, you know, tickets are going on sale for a movie or a concert or a new album is dropping. We're like, but the pattern is stunning. So I'm like,
it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. Like I've been watching two people test knitting it, so I was like watching it at the works. Like I can't wait for that.
Yeah, this will be my first knit along, so I'm kind of excited to try it.
Right. So like, is it the same colors or different colors?
Totally different colors.
Different colors.
Do you have like different color aesthetics in general?
Yeah.
We do. Sometimes they merge a little bit, but I usually like saturated, rich, bright colors most of the time.
I like muted.
He likes muted and dark and moody.
That sort of thing. Which is why that you know, the shawl I recently did that had the pink and mosaic was partly just a challenge to myself. Like I don't do bright very much. And I said, what if I just paired it with this insanely bright pink?
It looks cool. Wonderful for your complexion.
Yeah, well, thank you.
No, it was really pretty. Do you have some favorite designers or like favorite yarn dyers that you always come back to?
Well, in terms of designers, so Stephen West is a perennial favorite, and I think just learning to experiment with colors and different designs and whatnot. I loved this Andrea Mowry pattern that I did. So I'm absolutely going to be doing more of her stuff. And I'll think about yards, but
Yeah.
you think about design.
Same, definitely. I've done probably, in the majority of the pieces that I've completed have been Stephen West designs, but there are a number of others that are in there, so I do keep my eyes open for when they come
let's
through.
talk about Stephen West for a second. What is it about his patterns that draws you, that makes you want to do the next one and the next one and the next one?
For me, it's his bold use of color and sort of when I first was looking at knitting and watching and seeing things, I felt very much like I was looking at things my grandmother had done.
Right.
And I have deep admiration for my grandmother. She's passed, but she was an incredible woman. But there was a sensibility that I had to overcome personally. And his designs sort of broke through that barrier for me and showed me knitting in a different way. And now I can look at a broad spectrum of designers and patterns, and I see the building blocks that are there, but I see people taking things in different creative ways. And that is really sort of the appeal to me. Is he's, again, newer knitter for myself, seeing what he's done, I'm like, okay, I really dig that. I like what that's doing. I have no clue how to do it, but I'm really curious about it. And it sort of breaks that boundary for me of this old school idea of knitting, of, you know, the blanket or just the basic stuff, you know, the granny square. I know that's crochet, but that sensibility, I had to overcome that. And his designs really, and his styling and sensibility was extremely creative, is extremely creative, and really drew me in. It has a theatricality to it, and I was really, really drawn in.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good word. Because we originally both come from the performing arts in our background, and so does Stephen. And I think that's a bit of it. Like it is, like it's a little bit of a theatrical show. Like it's a little wild and crazy. And so I think it appealed to that
costume and makeup and lighting and movement, and it's just really expressive.
Right.
Really drawn to it,
which is fun.
Well, you know what draws me to his patterns, which is like completely different from what draws you to his patterns. It's the fact that he's complete, like you look at him and you think like with all the makeup and all the like the styling of the photography, and you think he's so wild, but when you knit it, it's so precise, it's so clean, it's like all the finishes are just like pristine, all the construction is like very exact, and in every single pattern he would teach some technique that like I didn't know before. So I feel like with every pattern of his, I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't know the German short rows, I didn't know the I chord, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. So it's like there is always some like little morsel of wisdom in it, and absolute pristine finishing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's because I did one of his patterns that involved picking up stitches, then when it was time for me to pick up stitches doing a sweater, I'd like built that skill and I had that confidence.
Right.
And so that's, I think, whether it's Stephen's patterns or other people's patterns, it's good to keep challenging yourself a little bit. And just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. And maybe you should just try that piece before you do the whole pattern, but give it a try. And if I think about what I was knitting 2 years ago and what I'm knitting now, it's like insane. It's crazy.
So like, what's the next challenge for you? Or what are you thinking about? Like besides Max the Knitter's shawl, which I don't know if that's like such a challenge for either of you because I've seen your knitting, but like, is there something, some like project that you're afraid of, project that you haven't tried yet, but you want to try?
I do, kind of to the sweater, I do want to do something that is a garment or a sock or something, I don't know what it is. There's a barrier that I haven't been able to sort of become comfortable with in that direction. To the conversation, like each thing I've knit has taught me something new. And so I really love that. And I don't always know that I'm going to learn it. I'm like, oh, here's a pattern. And I'm like, what does this mean? And then I go to YouTube and I'm like, Very Pink Knits, how do you solve this problem? And I get my lesson and I'm like, okay, now I know short row. And that terrified me. I stayed away from patterns for, a couple months because I was like, I don't know what that is. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And then I was like, that pattern is stunning. I have to learn.
Right.
And so that's sort of where it is. But socks, I would love to make a pair of socks. Everybody's like, socks are amazing. Homemade socks are, hand knit socks are wonderful. I've tried 3 times and I get like an inch of the cuff done and I'm like, it's too small. It's too fiddly. I don't love it.
It's funny because I have the same exact phobia of socks. Like I've knitted so many things and I know, like hypothetically speaking, that I can make it because I've made like I've made mittens. I've made like Fair Isle mittens, which is like somewhere like the logical person in me understands that if I made that, I should be able to make a plain pair of socks. But I'm like somehow terrified of it.
Well, and so mine is doing Fair Isle in the round. I have now done 2 or 3 projects. You've done at least one. And all of them ended up being too tight. And I had hats that like got stuck here. And so I need more practice on how to keep that loose. So I don't have any trouble doing color work, but for some reason, carrying the floats and so forth, it just ends up being super tight.
Right.
Can't quite figure that one out.
I made such a cute hat and I can't wear it. And I was like, oh, we'll give it to the neighbor and to the neighbor kid. And the neighbor's kid was too big, her head was too big for the hat. I was like, what did I do wrong? It was just too tight with the color work. So I was like, oh, we'll figure that out.
And the other fun challenge, which we're doing on Saturday, is we're taking our first dyeing class at a neighborhood fiber company in Baltimore, and our friends recommended it, and so we're gonna go learn how it's all done.
Start another hobby.
I'll be here to buy it when you like selling.
We'll let you know. Well, the pictures will go up on Instagram if it turns out.
Right.
But to that point, the question you asked about yarn, Neighborhood Fiber Company is a yarn that I've bought frequently. And another one that frequent is Miss Babs.
Lots. That's
very squishy.
Well, what pushed you to sign up for that class?
Curiosity. Same thing with knitting. Like when I started to, like why I wanted to learn knitting is I wanted to understand the process. And this is an extension of that. I now want to understand the process of dyeing yarn. God help me if I start wanting to learn how to spin, because
that was my next question. I was like, do you see yourself going into spinning?
We'll have shit in the backyard and we'll like have a whole machine going on up here.
Right.
But I'm very curious. I consider myself a lifelong learner and I want to keep learning. And this is just another component of that. Like with cooking, it's like, okay, you can grow the vegetables and then you do the thing and then you sit down and you eat and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. This is just sort of expanding, like, okay, I can knit yarn into an item. Now I want to dye the yarn and I want to learn that process.
Well, and maybe an appreciation of when you pick up that skein in your local yarn store and you see that price, you understand a bit why it costs that much.
Right.
Like for a hand-dyed yarn. Like it's not just the yarn itself, but it's everything that goes into making it.
Talking about cooking, so you mentioned that you used to be a food blogger, very amateur food blogger, very, very.
Very amateur, very, very.
You also mentioned that like you're spotting projects on Instagram just based on the photography. Do you think this is the skills that you picked up being the food blogger?
Maybe. When I was blogging on food back in the day, this was the early 2000s, it started as a way for me to share with a close group of friends. It was easy to be like, here's a new recipe I tried, and people are still sharing recipes in other ways today, but that was my goal when I started out to do it. And then it evolved a little bit, and I started to have random people following, and I was like, oh, this is weird. This is exciting. Okay. But then it started to feel like work.
Right.
And the minute it felt like work is when it started to lose interest for me. Sort of that obligation, like I have to do more. I have to make 3 new recipes this week and photograph them and post about them. And I lost interest in it. But I think maybe there was that little bit of sort of social media element that did transfer. Getting a good angle on the camera to get the right light. Sure.
Right.
Yeah, all of the best photos of my knits are the ones that he took. He takes way better pictures than I do. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
My turn. Angle. All right, find your light.
Do you ever consult each other on what to post on Instagram?
Yes, definitely. What to post, or even just like, I'm trying out these colors. Do these colors even look good? Or like, I think I made this mistake. Can you tell? Like it is really nice to have somebody that can bounce ideas off of, and also help you get out of sticky situations or show you how to do something that you didn't know how to do.
Right.
And it's like, I watched the video, but I'm just not getting it. Oh, I've done that before. Let me show you. So that, yeah, it's helpful to have that around. Easy resource.
When you're going to help me learn brioche.
I will finally teach you brioche.
Yeah.
We both took a brioche class, and it just did not click with Scott. But like, I got it, and I finished it. I got all the way through the project. And so, yeah, I'll teach you how to brioche.
Well, I recently learned how to do double knitting, and I blame it completely on Nico. So I met him on Instagram also, and I mean, he's like incredible with the double knitting. And so I was like, you know what, over the COVID, I tried to play with double knitting, and like brioche was, I mean, I got brioche, like it was totally manageable. I've done like a bunch of brioche. So I was like, okay, I thought if I can do brioche, double knitting should be easy. Let me tell you, it was not easy. So I was like trying and trying and trying. Then I was like, you know what, like I'll leave it for another day. Then I met Duke of Nico, and he was like, we had the interview. And after the interview, he was like, you know what, here's a pattern for you, just play with it. So he gifted me a pattern, and I felt like, he gifted me a pattern. I have to try it. So I decided to like, I'm going to give it another go. So I sat down, and he not only he gave me the pattern, but he actually had video of every single row on YouTube. He made tutorial for that pattern. There's like every single row knitted, like where you can see up close and personal. So I was like, okay, it's a piece of cake, right? There's like 50 rows, like how bad can it be? So I'm knitting the first like whatever 3 rows. I totally got it. I'm coming to the 4th row, and it's like I have floats where they're not supposed to be any floats. So I was like, okay, like how bad can, like he has the tutorial, like I'm watching the tutorial, he's knitting continental, I'm knitting continental, like I should get it, right? 7 tries later, I'm still like having floats. So I'm writing to him, and I was like, listen, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what I'm doing, but it just like ain't working, right? And he's like, okay, send me a picture. So I'm taking a picture, I'm sending it to him. And as the picture goes to him, it suddenly clicks how to do that. And I was like, hold on one sec, let me just try something. And that's how it was. It was like amazing. So now it's like, I finally feel like I conquered double knitting. So you just have to practice. You just have to give it another try, like one last try,
And fun fact, so that the night that I learned to knit in Harlem in New York, Duke of Nico was there. And so we met him.
No, you know what's funny? Like it's such a small world in reality. So I met him on Instagram. Then, like, we talked recently, something Stephen West, is usually like in every single interview, the name of Stephen West came up. And of course, I was like, well, if you know Stephen West, send him my way, you know. And he sends me picture from Rhinebeck where there is him with Stephen West. And I sent him back same exact picture with me and Stephen West in the same shawl and the same outfit. And I was like, we were probably like taking pictures at the same exact time on the same exact space without knowing each other, you know. So it's a small
It
world.
is. Yeah. Which is good. And again, like people are just so nice, and like it just it's worth getting to know people, follow people, comment, like, subscribe, etc. because
Cheer each other on,
yeah,
support each other.
Right.
Like, you're doing great.
I mean, sometimes like it does make all the difference. Like sometimes one kind word can make like all the difference in people's confidence. You know?
definitely.
I've seen it
Yeah.
times and times again.
The very first thing that I knit, that monstrosity that, like, I should have saved it just as a memory, but I reused the yarn. But I posted a photo of it, and a number of people were like, you did that in your first try? Good job. You should have mistakes. It's learning. It's this. And there was a lot of that cheering on and like, you got this. Keep going. Try again.
Right.
And then they were like, here's what you did in that spot. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I have no idea. But I now know what that meant.
Right.
But at the time they said I'm great. It was embarrassing, but I loved it.
Right. Have you ever had any like positive or negative experiences wearing your knitwear outside or knitting in public or anything, like because you're a man who knit?
Yeah, well, something that we started doing, and this was before the pandemic started, but so we had some friends locally that we kept it a little bit broader, just friends that were all crafty, so they might be doing cross stitch or knitting or various other things. And we went to one of our local breweries where we knew one of the owners, a couple of the owners, and we just reserved a table, and people would constantly come up to see, what is this little group of gay guys doing at this table? They're not just drinking beer. And their social media person wanted to keep taking pictures of us and put it on their Instagram account. And it's sort of like, I still think there is a bit of this weird stereotype that knitting is, for older women,
right,
only, and it's so not true. I mean, the knitting community is so diverse. So, it's good to provide a little visibility and let people know, like, yeah, like you can do this. Anybody can do this.
right.
You're such.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the pandemic put a kibosh on that, but we'll bring it back and start to get together with our people again. And it's just, again, sort of that, like, oh, what are you working on? That's really. That was the one piece that really has been missing over the last year and a half, is really like, oh, let me see, I want to feel the yarn, I want to watch what you're doing. It's a little more challenging in a social media environment, a virtual environment, to be able to share those same experiences. We've had a few knit nights that were on Zoom over the last year and a half, but it was a little more challenging to sort of share what you're working on. We were sitting there talking, telling stories, catching up, which was wonderful, but the mutual sort of experience of crafting together didn't quite translate the same.
Do you have like if you were to imagine mixing cocktails for like, let's say 3-4 people from Instagram, like random people, right? Who would it be that you would invite?
I don't know. There's too many.
Yeah, there are a lot.
So I'm going to go to actually the YouTube folks that I follow and watch. So Drawing in Yarn, Caleb, I really enjoy his show. Needles at the Ready, Stout Stitch, Smells Like Yarn, Grocery Girls, Fiber Hustle. Like I want to get us all together and like just knit and have cocktails and food and just have a great time.
Would you add anybody?
Yes, definitely. Even because if I get to add, then we're going to have even
Oh,
more.
well, Stacy and Casey.
So Stacy and Casey need to come because we've already talked about cocktails and whatever. So that's definitely happening. You know, Stephen can come. You are of course invited.
Thank you.
Rebel Pup Knits in Minneapolis needs to come. I adore Stephen in Hoboken that you interviewed. He's got to come. And then all of our friends that we're in these group chats with that have been sustaining us for the last year and a half, they have to come too.
Well, I hope that's happening. I hope it's like the pandemic is gonna be over soon, and I hope we'll meet and Brian back, and I hope we'll get to do that mixing night.
That's right. Everybody get vaccinated so we can all have fun together at Rhinebeck. That would be great.
Right. Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our chat.
It was a real treat talking with you.
Thank you.